So in this video, we're going to talk about how the grade gets integrated or composited across different skills, because both in content mastery and skill mastery, you have different skills which are being hit. So how does the grade get calculated, right? Well, first of all, we already saw in the previous videos that within each skill, it's about consistency across different contexts to get that 4 or that 5. But using his evidence portfolio here as an example, if you go to living systems, right, and let's say on the first skill of that unit, the student had a 5 because they showed uh, consistent mastery across different contexts, right? So they get a 5. But then when they got to the cell morphology, they struggled to do that and ended on a 2. Then, when it came to hierarchical organization of multicellular organisms, again, they scored a 5. And then, when it got to the basics of homeostatic mechanisms, they scored a 4. What grade does this student have right now for your content mastery? Well, 5 twice is 10 points. And then you have 2 points once, so that's 12, plus 4 makes 16 across 4 different skills. So on average, you would score a 4. So the student will probably be around a 4 in total on mastery level. Now, sometimes I may choose, instead of averaging the scores, to use the most common score. If I did that with this student, instead of averaging a 4, they would actually get a 5 because he got 5 twice. So I will tend to do whatever helps the student the most. And often I will go with the average because that's what the system does. But at the end of the semester, I will take a look at it and make an executive decision. And if the student has shown multiple 5s across the spectrum of the skills, uh, 5 is the most common grade. They get that 5 instead. So it all depends. So you're guaranteed the average, but based on teacher discretion, sometimes I can give you the mode, which is the most common grade instead. And that's up to the teacher and what they're going to do. So I use Unit 1 as an example. If this student was in Unit 1, they would have an A in the class, either an 85 or a 95, depending on how I graded it, right? So after Unit 1, and there's 4 content skills, they would have an A in that category, or at least an 85% if I gave them on the average, which was the 4, right? Now remember, the same thing applies to the skill mastery, right? So let's say you went through the unit and you had opportunities to do a bunch of different things. So all these skills, and let's say uh, 4 or 5 skills were assessed. The same process happens. If he has 3 for asking questions, 4 for using biological models, 3 for planning and carrying out investigations, 3 for analyzing and interpreting biological data, it looks like their most common grade is a 3. And if you actually do the average, it's going to be close to 3 also. So 3 was going to be the level that they hit in the rubric, right? Which is, if you remember the scale that we use, it's like equivalent to a C, right? Now remember that when it actually comes to the use of the scale, you might not actually use a 5-point scale, and all my examples so far have been using 5-point scales. It might be with the percentages instead, but remember that those percentages don't mean percentages of the points. That means a score that equivalent to the level that you are. So it has nothing to do with how much percent of the total you got. It's just the score for that level of the rubric, right? Uh, Sometimes I'll use the score, sometimes I'll use the scale, depends on what the school or district allows me to use on the gradebook. So even though all the examples I've done so far are using the 5-point scale, which is what I prefer to use, I might end up using the scores instead. So if that's the case, and remember, it goes from 50 to 100 if I use it that way. So that is how the grades get composited within each of those categories. Now, the content mastery is worth 30% of the grade, and then the skill mastery is worth 70% of the grade. So then those averages get weighted and put together to determine the final grade. Sorry, the skill is 60% of the grade. 10% is left for the final. We'll talk more about that on the next video, and I'll review those percentages then. See you guys then.